COVID-19, the novel coronavirus, has swept across the globe. The World Health Organization says it was first detected in Wuhan, China at the end of December. I'm Marcelo Quadra.
I'm Chris O'Brien.
And I'm Landry Valentin. The virus has now spread to more than 180 countries, infecting more than 3.2 million people and changing life as we know it around the globe.
This collection of stories highlights the tragedies, impacts, and changes people are facing as the world begins conquering the crisis. Here at home, the United States has been particularly hard hit. The first case was detected in Washington state on January 21st. 43 states had stay-at-home orders during this crisis. Johns Hopkins University reports more than 1 million COVID-19 cases were in this country, which has resulted in more than 62,000 deaths.
Like the USA, Ecuador is also a coronavirus hotspot. WFT's Jocelyn Donoso introduces you to one family already mourning the deaths of multiple loved ones.
Deception, desperation, anguish, and pain. Those are some words Ecuadorians use to describe their new reality.
Parece sacado una película de terror.
21-year-old makeup artist Domenica Gavilanes lives in Guayaquil, one of Ecuador's largest cities. She says it's horrifying to watch the pandemic unfold.
Muchas personas mueren en sus hogares, cuerpos que están ya fallecidos en sus casas por semanas o días.
She already lost 2 of her family members. On March 31st, COVID-19 took her uncle, and 2 days later, her partner's grandmother, Esther Santamaria. She says the doctor who checked Esther was not able to detect the virus, and that made it impossible for her to find what Santamaria needed.
Ella no pudo resistir, no necesitaba el oxígeno y pues no lo pudimos conseguir. Ya para el día siguiente ya fue demasiado tarde.
Heartbroken, Gavilanes also feels helpless. Her uncle and partner's grandmother are just 2 of the 900 deaths from coronavirus in a country with more than 24,000 cases, a number medical experts say is likely even higher.
Según nuestras cifras, que la manejamos con médicos acá, que son muy serios, tenemos contagiados en el país aproximadamente 40,000 personas y fallecidos aproximadamente de 12,000 a 13,000 personas.
Te pones a pensar, entonces, ¿por qué no hacen algo? ¿Por qué no hacen algo para que vaya disminuyendo?
Cases are exploding with a lack of tests and a shortage of medical supplies. Ecuador President Lenín Moreno issued a stay-at-home order on March 16. But Gavilanes says the public is not taking these orders and precautions seriously.
Personas ponían su piscina en la vereda, como que si fuera feriado, como que si fueran vacaciones. Se ponían a jugar bingo, entonces la irresponsabilidad y la ignorancia fue grande.
As numbers rise, more families will be impacted.
Que valora la vida. Mira, los que mis familiares que fallecieron, yo no los pude ver, no pude despedirme, no pude decirles algo, no se puede, porque desgraciadamente ni siquiera los puedes ir a enterrar.
As a grieving, Gavilanes struggles to find closure. Jocelyn Donoso, WUFT News.
Healthcare workers are on the front lines of this global pandemic and are doing everything they can to save lives. I had a chance to speak with an Italian nurse at the epicenter of the crisis. She recounted what it was like working with the wave of COVID-19 patients in Italy. Since March 10th, Italy has been on a nationwide lockdown in an effort to limit the spread of the coronavirus. But the nightmare that is COVID-19 began much earlier on January 31st when 2 tourists tested positive for the virus in Rome. 3 months later, the number of cases in Italy is approaching 200,000 with around 25,000 dead, a staggering death rate of about 12.5%.
Nos dañó mucho en el norte de Italia y aquí más en el sur éramos más preparados para esto y entonces estábamos mucho más atentos.
Anxious, stressed, exhausted. Italy's nurses were some of the first in the world to fight the virus on the front lines, adapting quickly to a situation with no concrete answers.
No es fácil ahorita un poquito de luz la empezamos a ver, eso sí. pero no es fácil, no es fácil. Es muy importante estar en la casa, sí.
Nurses were forced to experiment with treatments such as splitting ventilators, a procedure typically done during wartime when hospitals are unexpectedly and suddenly overwhelmed. Recently, nurses in Italy like Rosella have started doing something what is called prone ventilation, a tactic that is used on patients to open up their lungs, allowing more oxygen to flow in.
El pulmón se cierra y en ese modo se puede abrir porque están con el entubado, ¿no? Están colgados a un respirador.
Italy, which was once known as the epicenter for the virus in Europe, is now beginning to show signs of life again. Across the country, libraries and small stores have started to reopen. But with the coronavirus situation still going on in hospitals, families of many nurses fear that reopening the country too soon will lead to a second wave of infections.
Todavía no es el momento de dejar salir a toda la población porque el contagio es muy fácil de este virus.
But one of Giuseppe Vergari's fears is that his sister Rosella and many nurses in Italy will suffer emotional trauma.
Estamos en guerra, pero sin proyectiles.
And while the war against the virus rages on, Italy's nurses have hope that their country will turn the page on this dark chapter soon.
El italiano tiene un espíritu de ganas de salir adelante y es una arma en más que tenemos.
Marcelo Quadra, WUFT News.
Many countries are trying to find solutions that will stop the spread of COVID-19 and ease the strain on healthcare workers. Hong Kong was one of the few places without a stay-at-home order. WUFT's Carla Kokoris learned about policies and technology that help keep the virus in check here.
Hong Kong, a major commercial hub so close to the original COVID-19 epicenter, yet one of the few places in the world that has not been under lockdown during the COVID-19 crisis.
Because they've had experience dealing with epidemics and pandemics, they had SARS in 2003, 2004, they had MERS.
Hong Kong resident Robert Chipman says he first started hearing about the virus back in January.
I'd say by sort of the third week of January, everyone knew what the danger was and started to consider what we'd have to do. And I'd say by the end of January, steps were being taken.
Unprecedented steps that utilize technology to keep the population safe.
You've got this one point, an airport, and you got people coming in and they funnel into immigration queues and you can take their temperatures with infrared cameras. So it makes controlling the population or screening for contaminated people much, much easier.
But with even those plans in place, Hong Kong saw a second wave of infections.
Those were imported cases almost exclusively, and there was a big spike in I think it was late March and into April.
On March 27, Hong Kong had 65 new positive cases, the most the region has seen in one day. To combat the growing number, the government opted for stricter rules over a total lockdown.
There's a big expo center right next to the airport. Everybody who comes in goes to the expo center. It's like a big arena, and you get tested, and you have to wait until the results come back, which is, I think they do them in 6 to 8 hours.
Those testing positive are isolated. Negative visitors can leave, but still face a 14-day quarantine period. With the help of protective masks, social distancing, and technology, Chipman says the epidemic may go away, but the protective measures taken are likely here to stay. Carla Kokoris, WUFT News.
As communities battle COVID-19, the economic reality of the pandemic is becoming clear. I was able to investigate how some of Colombia's poorest citizens are coping with an economic shutdown in this Latin American country. Streets are empty and businesses shuttered in Colombia's capital city.
People are going to suffer here.
Bogotá now looks like a ghost town. Colombia's COVID-19 cases hover around 5,000. But the biggest problem isn't the virus itself, it's the effects of it.
77% of the Colombian workforce works in the informal markets and don't have any sort of welfare net. So it's not that they've lost their jobs, it's just that if they don't work, they don't get any money. Not having a job means not having any food on the table.
Colombian residents have been under strict stay-at-home orders for 6 weeks. On odd-numbered days, men can leave for essential trips only. It's the same for women on even-numbered days. Although the lockdown has kept the number of COVID-19 cases down, it created another problem: massive unemployment.
They don't have the capacity to respond to the virus if a lot of people need medical attention. So that's why they've been very proactive about the lockdown measures. But that's going to cause the economic problems, and we're really already starting to see that.
So it's almost a catch-22, essentially.
Right, which I think it's like that around the world. Here, people are poor, and so, it will be a matter of being able to afford food, really.
The Colombian government has already given about 3 million workers not previously enrolled in welfare programs a lump sum check of $40, equivalent to just 12% of a monthly wage. Another 2.6 million families received payments of $80 to help ease the pain of unemployment during a time with so much uncertainty.
The region still doesn't know whether they've been spared, they've avoided the burn of coronavirus, or whether it's just still around the corner.
From South America to the South Pacific, New Zealand is a top tourist destination. But without any tourism, the country of 4 million people is losing about 110 million New Zealand dollars a day. WUFT's Victoria Somayan puts those numbers in perspective.
New Zealand is a hotspot for vacationers around the world.
We have well over 3 million visitors a year to the country. That number has obviously changed quite a lot in recent weeks and months.
A change New Zealand's experts say has devastated the nation's economy.
It's been, I guess, catastrophic in a lot of ways.
Back in March, New Zealand closed its borders to all travelers. The Restaurant Association of New Zealand's CEO Marissa Bidois says the industry first saw signs of a potential problem weeks earlier.
We really first started feeling the effects as early as the end of January as COVID-19 spread throughout China. We have a large Chinese sort of tourism that comes into New Zealand.
Bidois says about 20% of the restaurant industry in her country will not survive the global pandemic, shutting down permanently. That equates to roughly 30,000 jobs lost.
This will be impacting our industry not just for the next few months, but, for at least the next 18.
University of Auckland professor Simon Milne says the tourism industry is a major part of New Zealand's economy.
Tourism is the number one source of foreign exchange earnings. It's actually also the number one source of jobs for our labour force.
Moving forward, Milne believes New Zealand's tourism industry will have to figure out how to prosper again with fewer visitors in the short term.
Perhaps we need to rethink about how we get more value out of every visitor that comes to us, how we find ways to strengthen the linkages between tourism and communities and local economies, how we can manage to generate more benefit for communities from a smaller number of visitors.
On April 27th, the country started easing its lockdown, allowing some businesses to reopen with restrictions on physical interaction with customers. Public venues still remain closed.
We think this is the start of hopefully a recovery for the industry.
A recovery that will be missing the tourists, at least for now. Victoria Somayan, WUFT News.
Small businesses are critical to the global economy, and they have been particularly hard hit. WFT's Madison Glazier spoke with two brothers who are business owners in South Africa, struggling to stay afloat.
Students at the University of the Free State campus in Bloemfontein, South Africa, often come here to get a cup of joe. Arlindo Fernandez bought the coffee shop just 2 weeks before COVID-19 fears grinded everything to a halt.
So since the 20th of March, the income from the businesses or the revenue was completely shut down.
Fernandez says the coffee shop will likely be closed until July, which means no students and faculty to help ease the economic meltdown. Fernandez is catching one break to help keep his business solvent.
The University of the Free State really helped a lot because they were very considerate about the situation and they made their own type of solution with regards to rent.
Fernandez's brother Armando owns a local restaurant, now closed for 6 straight weeks. With no money coming in, his forecast is bleak.
Like, we can't pay rent, we can't pay our workers. Here in South Africa, we have UIF, it's like unemployment insurance, and only half of my staff got unemployment insurance.
Both brothers are just trying to hold on to their businesses in Bloemfontein. Madison Glazier, WUFT News.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa is easing the lockdown. Armando Fernandez can now open his restaurant with 1/3 of his staff, but he's unsure if it will be worth it.
The coronavirus is not only threatening our physical health, but mental health issues are on the rise. WUFT's Violet Comber-Weiland explains how lockdown in the United Kingdom has impacted its citizens.
Sheltering in place, isolated, English University student Morgan Grau is coming to terms with Britain's strict stay-at-home order.
At first, it was quite frustrating having to stay at home because my college experience was kind of ruined. Had to come home early.
Weeks later, the Exmouth, England student is still struggling with loneliness and nostalgia.
I'm looking through all my pictures and I'm like, oh, miss what life was like.
Grau can only leave her South England home to go outside once per day. These orders are strictly enforced by law enforcement, and the sudden change of routine has left her feeling overwhelmed.
It was weird going from being around my friends 24/7 because we were in those halls together, and then coming here and not having anyone to relate to or anyone my age, and family can get a bit much sometimes.
People throughout England are facing these mental battles as restrictions alter daily life. In the Journal of American Medicine, British researchers are warning about an increase in anxiety, depression, substance abuse, loneliness, and domestic violence. London architect Ben Blackledge says the pandemic's uncertainty makes it difficult to be positive.
As far as I'm concerned, it's quite difficult to be optimistic when you don't know those facts.
Blackledge misses human interaction. He says communicating solely through social media has made him feel more isolated.
I don't think you can ever get the full picture of how someone really is that way.
Blackledge and Grau cope by keeping busy, a distraction until they can finally return to normal life. Violet Comber-Weiland, WUFT News.
The COVID-19 pandemic also coincides with the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. WUFT's Jolina Esperto shows us how social distancing and lockdown mean prayer and celebrations in Indonesia will look a lot different this year.
It's a time of fasting, a time of prayer.
We do reunion with our elementary school friends or high school friends, even way before that, like childhood friends.
And a time when loved ones reunite.
I think that's what's going to be different this year.
Ramadan is the Islamic holy month when Muslims believe God revealed the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad. The month-long festivities will look very different for Indonesia's 225 million Muslims during the global pandemic. The Indonesian government has requested all mosques close.
The government suggests that we should not do those religious activities.
But some neighborhood mosques have not heeded the warning.
Some people, especially the more conservative one, because there are so many of them in here, they still go to the mosque to do prayers and even meet people.
Another Ramadan custom impacted, breaking the daily fast after sunset and a gathering with friends and loved ones. Jakarta resident Vicky Amin says those gatherings will take place online.
Some of my circles have started to give some ideas about what we are going to eat while we're in front of the video conference. So we are going to have the different kind of menu and then eat together with your friends online.
Still, Amin says he will miss some of the personal connections with extended family, friends, and faith during Ramadan.
Since we are in this large scale of social distancing, it's not really easy.
Amin is remaining positive. He says he'll have more time than usual to participate in nightly prayer during Ramadan this year.
Since I'm just going to be at home, I'm pretty sure I can do all the 30 prayers at home with my family. So yeah, that's the positive thing that I can see for this pandemic during Ramadan.
Remaining optimistic in isolation during the coronavirus outbreak. Jolina Esperto, WUFT News.
While religious worship has been impacted greatly, the world's athletes were left sidelined completely. The 2020 Olympics in Tokyo were postponed 1 year, and all major sports leagues stopped competing. WUFT's Zach Oliveri takes us to Turkey, where one former Gator had her basketball season upended.
After 2 seasons as a Florida Gator, Funda Nakasoglu was ready to start the next chapter in her basketball career. She joined Turkish team Galatasaray for her first season of professional basketball.
The European League and the Turkish League are both very high competitions, so I was excited to just soak up what I could and get some experience in that aspect.
Nakasoglu's team was rolling, holding a 15-3 record on the year. Coronavirus concerns initially forced the team to play a game without fans.
It literally felt like a training session. I remember warming up and I felt so weird. Obviously, you know, the bench people were there and the referees and whatnot, but it just did not feel the same at all.
She didn't know it at the time, but that would be the final game of the season.
We had like 2 or 3 days and there was like a lot of talk up in their end, and they, you know, told us that the league was getting postponed and then eventually cancelled because it had gone, you know, from 0 to 100 real quick.
Turkey became a coronavirus hotspot. The bridge between Europe and Asia had more than 118,000 cases with over 3,000 deaths by the end of April. With the season over, Nakasoglu and her teammates processed through what could have been.
A lot of us were hoping that, you know, maybe it would pass and would be able to play later on in the year, in the finals especially. But, you know, it obviously sucked, but everyone knew that it was for the best. I mean, everyone's health is more important than anything.
Nakasoglu is now home in Australia, arriving before the country closed its borders.
I had 2 days to pack up my stuff, leave my apartment, you know, say my goodbyes, and get back home. So it was very chaotic.
Abrupt goodbyes are not forever. Basketball will eventually return, and Nakasoglu is ready.
You miss it straight away. Even if you've been doing it for so long, it's just like a part of you now. So I'm just itching to get back.
Back on the court, where she belongs. Zach Oliveri, WUFT News.
Another lasting impact from this pandemic? One estimate shows more than 1.5 billion students are currently out of school. WUFT's Emma Bautista shows us some of the struggles with e-learning in Spain.
Classrooms sit empty. Hallways are quiet. Like many of the world's children, more than 8 million Spanish students are learning online during the global pandemic.
Now, there's no presential or physical class lessons course, and you only have online teaching.
Jose Luis Villalba Merchan is an English teacher at the Secondary School Institute in a small town near Seville, Spain. Merchan had to quickly adapt his teaching to an online environment, a transition that hasn't been easy.
The connection is does it work? No, it doesn't work, and it's kind of a mess.
Online learning is uncommon in Spain, making the transition harder here than in other countries. Merchan says he can only talk to his students through email or a one-on-one Google Hangout, drastic changes that are hindering his students.
You can send some exercises, even exams, but it's not the classroom interaction.
Spanish university students and professors are in the same boat, even though they utilize online resources more often.
Aquí la educación por ordenador es complicada, sobre todo para los colegios e institutos, porque los de la universidad pues sí tenemos más contacto con las plataformas virtuales, pero es que en los colegios no han tocado un ordenador para enseñar a un niño en la vida.
University of Seville senior Maria Rodriguez Gomez is more concerned about educational experiences she is missing out on. She needs to complete an internship to graduate, but the COVID-19 pandemic has made this nearly impossible.
Yo, por ejemplo, es como, ¿ahora qué hago? O sea, no lo sé, porque también quiero ser azafata. El año que viene quería buscar...
Tough choices Gomez will make almost certainly during a global recession. In the meantime, millions of Spanish students will close out the school year at home in isolation.
Last term, the contents are almost gone.
Lost time Merchan says he will have to make up for when his students finally return next school year. Emma Bautista, WUFT News.
Learning in a virtual world will never be possible without parents. WFT's Alexis Greaves introduces us to an Australian working mom turned teacher during the global pandemic.
Ronika Patel is an accountant for Saputo Dairy Australia, but she can now add teacher to her resume.
I used to go to work every day, but since it's been lockdown, we have been working from home. And actually, I have reduced my hours as well because I can't do full-time work and also homeschool the children because now they're studying from home.
Patel's kids sit in their home office right behind her desk, ready to work hard with their new teacher.
Initially, they were on Easter break from March 27 till April 14th. So that week, we just did few things. But on the day the school started, we set up the study desk. It's a bit chaos.
Patel's homeschooling starts at 9 a.m. daily. The children learn math, English, and reading, following the routine of a regular school day to keep them on track.
It's hard to do homeschooling and following all the agendas that teacher has to give my young children because I've got a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old and they've got to be accountable for their work. That means I'm accountable for their work, basically.
This routine comes at a cost, though. Patel had to cut back hours from work to keep up with her children's education.
I couldn't do 8 to 4 because I work full time and I couldn't manage 8 to 4 and also look after my kids. So I had to make a decision where what do I do? So I've reduced my hours. I only work 4 hours a day and till they go back to school.
Reduced hours means reduced pay during a time of economic uncertainty. Still, Patel is grateful she could make the best choice for her family.
I'm pretty fortunate to be working for the company that I have and to be fortunate to have a job because a lot of people have lost, all over the world have lost jobs. The companies have shut down. It's affected a lot of economy, over the world.
Alexis Greaves, WUFT News.
There is so much uncertainty as the fight against COVID-19 continues. But I wanted to share one success story of adaptability and hope. A magazine in Ireland is finding a way to succeed by embracing a new normal during these trying times.
Ireland is a country known for its rich culture, scenic views, and spirited pub life. However, streets that were once buzzing with activity are now silent as the coronavirus pandemic has prompted a government-issued lockdown until early May.
Nothing is open. There's no social centres open at all. Pubs, cinemas, theatres, music venues, everything is closed.
Nos magazine, a Gaelic lifestyle and culture magazine, typically reports on concert and film reviews, travel guides, and what's going on around the country.
We focus a lot on events happening in Ireland.
But COVID-19 has forced Nos and its editor, Matteo Colmian, to develop content that serves its readers in quarantine. Instead of having its usual weekly events guide, one Nos reporter has created an at-home version.
So she's adapted it to, we call them home events, and she goes around the internet looking for different challenges or things that people are doing, and she puts together, why don't you try this?
The magazine has also made efforts to be more interactive on social media by sponsoring writing workshops, gardening tutorials, and other ways to engage its audience.
One of my friends is a yoga teacher, so I've gotten her on our Instagram page every Friday morning at 9:30. She does a yoga class for an hour, which is quite popular.
The team of journalists is even working on a mental health video series to help Irish suffering in isolation. Despite challenges, Nos's readership is up 14% from last year, most likely because people have more time to read.
It hasn't crippled the magazine at all. But there's still other things happening, and there's still opinion pieces going out, and there's still culture news.
Koimian hopes people come out of the pandemic more appreciative of the events the world around them has to offer. Landry Ballatin, WUFT News.
From Indonesia to Italy and South Africa to Spain, all ends of the earth have been impacted by the coronavirus pandemic.
We've shared stories of loss and economic uncertainty, coupled with the impacts we're feeling in everyday life, from religious celebrations to a new way of learning.
It is a challenging time, but we hope you see the light at the end of the tunnel. Slowly but surely we are conquering the crisis.